Good judgment is when you do the right thing, and bad judgment is when you do the wrong thing.
Good judgment's like positive, and bad judgment's like not good.
Just having good judgment means you won't do things that'll get you in trouble, and you won't get yourself hurt, and bad judgment will.
Knowing how to make the right decision or wrong decision.
Good judgment is following what's morally right.
Well, bad judgment can cause problems in your life that you could get in trouble, and good judgment means you're a good person and you know right from wrong.
I think it's the decisions you make. Like if it's bad judgment, if you make a bad decision, you're gonna have to pay the consequences later. But if it's a good decision, then the outcome should be better.
What do you use to form your opinions and judgments when you're making decisions?
I guess, gut feeling, gut instinct.
I use my mind.
I have to look it up. Like I use the internet a lot to find out information before I really make a big decision about something.
I'll run stuff through my friends before I just act upon it. So I use past life experiences.
I think ahead.
People's advice and just my morals and what I believe in.
Usually my faith.
I think about the situation and all the bad and good things that come out of it.
I just think of what my mother would think and how God would see me.
An Associated Press article in July of 2009 reported that police said bad judgment, not alcohol, was likely to blame for the deaths of 5 young people after their car skirted a railroad gate near Detroit and was struck by a passenger train.
Canton Township Police spokesman Sergeant Mark Gajeski said Friday there was no indication that alcohol or anything else was involved other than bad judgment in the crash about 20 miles west of Detroit.
We all make good and bad decisions throughout our lives, and some of them we can learn from and they make us better.
And others, like the tragic train crash, can cause permanent harm.
So what can we do to try to make good judgments and even influence our friends to make better judgment or decisions in their lives?
Using good judgment, that's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Kristen.
And I'm Elias.
And this is Realfaith TV. As we get older, we naturally mature, and our decision making and judgment should also improve through what we learn and experience.
As St. Paul writes in Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11, "When I was a child, my speech, feelings, and thinking were all those of a child.
Now that I'm a man, I have no more use for childish ways."
We are no longer children, and yet not quite adults, but it is time to put away our childish behavior and begin to make better judgments and decisions in our lives.
The teens on the street we met at the beginning of the show said that they rely on friends, experience, and their faith, among other things, when they're forming opinions to make decisions.
We'll hear from them a little later on in the show, as well as meet our studio guests.
But first, let's meet our spotlight guest, Manny, who will tell us how he feels about judging others.
And what the difference is between judging others and lovingly correcting them.
I try not to be a judgmental person because I don't want people to judge me. I felt like the hardships of people judging me in my past, and especially when I was little, and I don't want to be that way. There's a lot of stereotypes, a lot of just assumption based on what people look like. I try to take every person as their own person and try to get to know them. If everyone just took out that time and just, when they meet another person, just meet them for that person, and not just based on what they look like and assume you know that person. When you point out someone's mistake, you're not trying to feel like you're better than the other person. You're just trying to help the person. So I would love if I'm making a mistake for someone to point it out to me. Judging is when you take this higher authority about it. People who point out mistakes, they're trying to help you. They love you because they want you to be better. And people judging, that's just people maliciously just pointing out your faults and accusing you of things.
Well, let's meet our studio guests and talk about the difference between judging someone and pointing out their mistakes.
Okay, they are Dan, Jackie, Jimmy, Phil, Nick, Jordan, and Mary.
All right, so I have 2 questions for you guys. First of all, are you judgmental? And what do you think is the difference between judging someone and lovingly correcting them?
I try and think that I'm not a judgmental person. I try and look at someone and not judge them right off the bat, just kind of let them explain themselves, introduce themselves, and maybe find out a little bit more about them. And I also think that if you judge someone, it's kind of a preconceived notion that you just look at them based on what they look like, how they're dressed, what they're wearing, what they say. And lovingly correcting someone means that you actually care about them and you want the best for them and you want them to succeed in what they're doing.
I feel that when I first meet someone, I do tend to judge them, but I think it's just a human nature because it really only takes 4 seconds for you to, when you meet someone and they shake their hand, you like judge them. But when you actually get to know someone, I don't think you actually you stop judging them.
Some of my best friends, like I thought they were like the weirdest people. I was like, you know what? I don't like that girl. And now we're best friends and like I was like, I judged you and I judged you all wrong.
I find myself judgmental at times, like, you know, when I meet new people, I say like, oh man, she's like really annoying or she's really fun to be around. Like lovingly correcting means like you're really good and I think you can maybe even be better.
I can tend to be really judgmental too, but I'm like really working at not doing that because a lot of times I'll see someone and form judgments like you were saying in the first 4 seconds. I don't like to do that, but my mind just goes straight to it. So I'm working on not doing that and, I don't know, recognizing that everyone's like a human person and they deserve my respect. The difference between the two is really the intention that lies behind the judgment.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that too.
Absolutely.
To piggyback off what you said, I think the difference is when you're judging someone, you're pointing out their flaws in a negative aspect. But when you're lovingly correcting them, it's honest feedback, whether it's positive or negative. You're telling them and you're trying to help them.
If I meet someone, I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, like even if they seem annoying, like I know instinctively that God made everyone in his image and likeness, so everyone deserves the same respect as you or me would. So I kind of look at them, I'm like, all right, let's see how this person is. And I don't really judge them, I just kind of go with where they are and who they are.
Yeah, like giving people the benefit of the doubt. Like my mom always talks about, like you don't know what they've been through, you know how their day's been going. They could be in a bad mood, so you just have to let them be.
What really is good judgment?
Well, actually, Elias, Webster defines good judgment as the process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing.
An opinion or estimate so formed.
So, do you consider yourself someone who generally makes good judgments?
That's what we asked the teens on the street.
Do you generally use good judgment or make good decisions in your life?
Yeah, I try to.
I'd say I've got a pretty good head on my shoulders, so I'd use good judgment most of the time.
Yeah, I think so. I generally do make good decisions. Most of the time, yeah.
Yes, definitely. For the most part, I think I use good judgment in my life.
I always use good judgment making decisions every time.
I try to make good decisions, but sometimes I will make bad ones, but it usually ends up good in the end.
Usually I use good judgment. Sometimes I use bad judgment and have a little bit more fun.
I do try and I do fail. But I do try to do what I can and to make those judgment calls based on rationale rather than pure emotion.
Share any stories or experiences in your life when you used bad judgment.
Like the time I probably decided to play ding dong ditch with my friends all night.
Did something really bad at camp and then got kicked out of it while I was working.
Chose to do otherwise of what my mother told me to do.
Well, I climbed out of a moving car and went on the roof. I wouldn't call that good judgment.
I went to a party one time and I got drunk despite my better judgment.
What did you learn from the times you used bad judgment?
I learned not to do it again.
Well, not to do it again.
To use better judgment.
Going really fast on top of a car is not a good idea.
I learned that maybe making those decisions won't help me much in my life, so I just choose to do better choices and better things.
I have to think more about my actions and think what if about things, and before I do anything, just think about consequences.
I try to make, good judgments. I mean, as I'm noticing, like as I'm getting older, decisions are becoming more important to me, and I'm trying, to do what's right and healthy. Like, just maturing. It's just something that you get with age. Like when you're 6, you're not really pulling apart decisions.
Well, not only that too, it's like for every bad decision you make, you generally learn from it. So I mean, sometimes you have to make those bad decisions, not consciously, but when you do, it's like you're almost guaranteed that you're not going to make that decision again.
Yeah. I think we try to make good judgments every day, but we're going to falter, we're going to mess up. I'll be the first one to admit I've made mistakes, whether it's fighting with my sister or fighting with someone else. But I think we take something from it, and in taking something from it, we grow from it and we learn.
So I would say that I have done good judgments for me, and I have done good judgments for someone else too.
I kind of go with my gut when things come up. But when it comes to a larger decision, like I'll really think about it, I'll look at all the consequences. And it'll take a bit more time, but that's when I go to prayer and think about it and really meditate on the decisions I have to make.
I think something important with decisions is knowing yourself. Like if I have a huge test Monday and I have like back-to-back Sweet 16s that weekend and one of my friends asks me to sleep over, I'll be like, I'll just say no, because I know I can't do it. Like I won't be able to handle all the work and in that little amount of time.
But sometimes when I feel like I make a good judgment, it really sometimes in the end comes out as a mistake. Right. Because and I learn from that for the future.
That's why it's good to pray and talk to other people, because it's good to get everybody else's opinions and maybe they'll have something to share, something you didn't even think about or consider. With decision making, we tend to weigh out the pros and cons.
We can pray about it.
We can also go to our friends and family for advice.
In the end, if it's our decision to make, we must choose.
Many times we may feel torn between two sides, but we can rely on how we feel inside our gut, inside our conscience.
This is why it's so important to have a well-formed conscience to help us with our decisions.
And we also need the courage to follow it.
Next, our spotlight guest Manny tells us about a time when he used bad judgment by not going to gym class.
And another time when he used good judgment by preventing a friend from driving after drinking. It took a lot of courage, but he knew it was the right thing to do.
In high school, I didn't go to my gym class. It got to be like a huge problem. I was just always late to school, all because I just really didn't want to go to gym because I just felt like there was no point to going to gym. It got to be such a problem, my graduation was at stake. Just had to grow up and just realize I have to do some things even though I don't like it. Sometimes when you make bad judgments, you can't go back and fix it. Like how I fixed it, sometimes you can't. I corrected a friend one time when he was about to get into the car. He was drinking, and it was definitely not the best decision to be driving. And those are the type of decisions that I'm talking about. Like, if you get into a car and you've been drinking and something were to happen, you could either hurt yourself, hurt somebody else, and you can't go back and fix that. We were at a party. I wasn't drinking, he was drinking. He was about to leave and he was about to drive, and I asked him, I was like, are you okay to drive? And he was like, yeah, sure. And for some reason, I just didn't trust him, so I kept pressing him about the issue. I was like, are you sure? Are you fine? Do you want me to drive? And it took some talking, and I was just like, I'll just drive your car. I'll be careful with it, just to be safe. And I just ended up taking him back home. I cared about him enough to talk to him. Like, I could have just left him there and said that, okay, fine, just be careful, and just hope that he got home okay. He was a good friend of mine, and I wouldn't want a good friend of mine to put himself into danger or anybody else into danger. Some people might say that it's their car, their life. It's up to them to do what they want to do, and of course they're right about that. You have to take a stand. Taking a stand might require courage, but remember, a little bit of courage could save a life.
The Catechism states that deep within his conscience, man discovers a law which he has not laid upon himself, but which he must obey.
Its voice, ever calling him to love and to do what is good and to avoid evil, sounds in his heart at the right moment.
For man has in his heart a law inscribed by God.
His conscience is man's most secret core and his sanctuary.
There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his depths.
God asks us not only to use our conscience to use good judgment in our own decisions,
but to help our friends.
Helping a friend to use good judgment is showing them love, showing them that you care.
Next, the teens on the street tell us if they've ever prevented a friend from making a bad decision,
and if it was difficult to do.
Oh, I've kept a lot of my friends out of trouble over the years.
Yes, I think so, and a lot of friends have helped me not do bad things too.
Yeah, I have, because my friend wanted to smoke weed, but I talked him out of it.
I try, but I mean, if they don't want to listen, then they don't listen.
Yeah, all the time, but they don't listen to me anyway. So they end up making the mistake, and then they come back to me and be like, oh, I should have listened. I'm like, yeah, I told you so.
My cousin was gonna go and go to a party, but she had to drive home after. And I told her that drinking and driving could kill her, and she didn't go.
I stopped my friend from going to this party that was gonna be bad news, so I told him to come and he went and chill somewhere else.
I kept a friend from sleeping with a guy.
I mean, if it's one of your best friends, if they're trying to get you to not do something, you're gonna listen a lot more.
If you have a really close friend, they'll understand where you're coming from and know that you just want the best for them.
It wasn't difficult because I really love my cousin, so I want her to be safe. She respected me a lot more for it. And she thought that, I actually cared for her, which I do.
It was difficult because it wasn't the cool thing, but my friend was appreciative that I was caring about them.
I just tried to talk them out, and they responded in a bad way because they said they wanted to be cool, but I told them they shouldn't do it anyway.
It was not difficult to do because I did believe it was wrong, and they still did it, but they still respected me and appreciated my wanting to help them.
Sometimes people listen, but then sometimes they get like annoyed, like thinking that like you're babysitting. If they're your friends and you love them, you have to at least try.
One of my friends was going, to go to a party once, and there's a lot of stuff going on that we've never, like my group of friends really just doesn't, get involved with too often. So what happened was, he was really psyched, and he's like, yes, I can't wait. This is gonna be something new and fresh. We're going to college next year. Let's go try it out. And I didn't really judge him or anything. I just kind of sat there and I was like, I mean, are you sure you really want to do that? Because that's really not like you. And, he eventually went, but he didn't do what he thought he was going to do. And it was nice to kind of know that, I guess I kind of helped him push in one kind of way. So he still had the fun without, doing the thing that probably would have, killed him or, really harmed him in the long run.
My group of friends doesn't really get into trouble. We try and stay away from the whole drinking and smoking scene. And one night we had a sleepover, we were kind of talking about it. Some of my friends were saying, oh, it might be cool to try it. My one friend mentioned that her sister is over the age of 21 and she would be able to get alcohol and be able to supply it. And, I talked to I have a group of friends that we're close with, but some of them I'm closer with. And I talked to my one friend, I'm like, why would they bring that up now? We really don't do things like that. And she agreed with me. We kind of decided to stay together and not get involved in drinking and going out of what we usually do.
I had a similar situation with my friends from 8th grade where we were hanging out and they decided to go off and start drinking. And I mean, I tried to convince them not to because I knew how stupid it was. And we had actually sort of talked about how stupid it was together. And when it came down to it, they chose to go down that path and I chose the other way out, and I would refuse to do that. And I ended up losing all of them as friends. But I mean, out of that, I gained great friends that respect me for who I am.
There are many times we make judgments that we regret.
Next, Manny tells us about a time when he used bad judgment in listening to rumors about a friend.
He also gives us advice on using good judgment.
Me and my best friend, we knew this girl, and my best friend really didn't like this girl. And I started becoming friends with the other girl. We were becoming really good friends. We talked to each other. We spent a lot of time together. And then my best friend started telling me a lot of things that I wasn't too happy about. And I judged her. I believed that she was just a really mean person, and I didn't want to talk to her anymore. And we haven't talked since then. And I've come to the realization that some of the things that my friend were saying, they were wrong. She just had this reputation of that. She was never that sort of person. And I definitely was wrong to judge her. I should have just got to the truth. I feel like that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my life, is just listening to another person about another person. I should always find out for myself. And hopefully that maybe before the end of the summer, we can maybe start talking again. But that's one of the lessons I learned. Don't believe the judgments of other people. You should find out for yourself. Before I make a decision, I like to try to weigh out the pros and cons to see what the effects would be of my decision. I've made a lot of decisions in my life, a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones. And if you just take the time before you make a decision just to think about it, it would make the world of a difference, because some decisions are irreversible. Definitely my parents. I always think about them before I try to do something completely crazy, because how would they feel about it afterwards? What about if something would happen? How would my mom feel? How would my sisters feel? Because I'm an older brother, I have to be that beacon of light, or that star for my sisters to grow up to. I really don't want to disappoint them. So when I'm thinking about doing things, I think would I be that brother my sisters could be proud of, that they could look up to. So that definitely influences a lot of my decisions.
My sophomore year, I was taking this U.S. History 1 class, and I love U.S. History. That's my thing. So the entire semester I was working, and everything that I did was perfect in that class. And then it came down to this research paper, which was a huge part of the grade. I crafted the research paper so well, and the only thing I had left was the bibliography cited in MLA format. So I decided, you know what, it's going to take me 5 minutes. I'll go out to this movie premiere at midnight, and I'll just do it when I get home. Came home, 4 in the morning. I did my bibliography real quick. I got a B on the paper because the bibliography was not in alphabetical order. And after spending so much time putting into the class and into the paper, ultimately my overall grade didn't go down too much, but I was so disappointed in myself for just making that just dumb decision. It would have taken 5 minutes before the movie, just do a bibliography and read all the directions, but.
This year in chemistry, the whole year I worked really hard. I got like, really good grades on my midterms and everything. And then it came down to like the last semester and I was like, it's almost June, it's so hot out, I just want to relax. And I was still studying, but I was kind of blowing it off, and I went from getting like 100s and 95s to getting like maybe like a 90 or like an 85. And it actually turned it out because I couldn't get into honors physics this year because the one semester, even though I had gotten 100 on the midterm and 100 on the final, the 85 that I got in that one semester actually kept me out of honors physics. So it was kind of disappointing.
Another time when I used bad judgment is one, actually a few weeks ago I went to a party and this whole group of us decided like we wanted to go ding dong ditching in the neighborhood, and I said, you know, I've never done it before, so I'll give it a shot. And so we went there and no one knew this was gonna happen. Like some of the guys, they started to like vandalize people's property. I mean, that was a really bad judgment on my part. Probably the better judgment was not even to go.
It's important to practice prudence when making judgments and decisions.
God's love must always be present and forefront when making decisions.
Next, the teens on the street tell us if their faith and relationship with God helps them to use good judgment.
Does your faith inspire you to help your friends in this way?
Yes, very much.
Always. It always inspires me. Faith is great.
Yeah, because I tell them God's with you, just pray, and then good things will happen.
I think God helps me a lot because I always if I ever have really anything, I can just ask him about it. And usually, I feel like I have the answer.
I always think about him watching down on me.
I think about how God would want us to act, so I just think of what he would do.
The Bible and its teachings would be, it's a good set of guidelines to live by.
Psalm 23, it pretty much says that no matter if you're in bad times or good times, stuff like that, you need to keep good judgment and you need to do what's right.
Well, God has set forth rules, and I know he wants us to do those things, and I want to make him happy, so that really helps me to do what I know is right.
Next, Manny tells us how he feels Jesus has helped him to use good judgment.
He also shares how a bad judgment as a child reminds him today to be more cautious in his decision making.
One time when I was little, I was sitting on the bed and my sister, who was she was probably 4 at the time, she was sitting on the bed too. And for some reason, I really, really wanted to jump on the bed. I thought it would be like a cartoon that I would jump on the bed and she would just float up and just fall. I just thought this would be so funny. So she was sleeping and I just started jumping on the bed. She just really wasn't moving. And then all I heard was snap. The whole bed broke. The whole, there was boards underneath the bed to hold it up, and it was this huge king-size bed, and I just broke through the bed, and I was like, uh-oh. Man, I was in trouble for a while. That was when I was younger, and I was just understanding the power of making good decisions, and ever since then, I've been more cautious about making decisions. I try to think more, but just before doing it because I think it would be funny, or doing it just because I think it would be cool. Because Jesus loves me. He wants the good for me as well. So I know he tries to help me make better decisions. So I like to try to help people make better decisions for themselves as well. My relationship with God definitely helps in making better decisions because I think about him before I make the decision. I think about, would he be proud that I'm making this decision? Do I feel good making this decision? And I feel like if everyone just spent a little bit more time just thinking about what they do before they do it, we would have a much better world. Before I have a really hard decision coming up, I really like to pray on it. I like to spend a little time and just quiet time to myself and just think about it. Because as I said, some decisions could be irreversible, and Jesus is always there in prayer to help me, to lead me on the right path. My mom always told me to think before I act. Prayer gives me the opportunity to understand that.
Before you judge anything, you should stop and think, because usually when you react quickly, you make quick judgments, you're thinking irrationally, and you're thinking based on your emotions.
You have to be prudent and cautious in making your decisions. You really have to weigh the pros and cons of the outcomes. And, you know, if you're a person who wants to please your parents and who wants to, you know, have a really healthy lifestyle and what's in your best interest and also in the best interest of the people around you, you know, when you make your decisions, you're not only thinking about yourself, but you're also thinking about how you're going to affect other people and what they'll think about you.
Yeah, and definitely from a faith perspective, just saying a prayer, asking God for guidance, that definitely helps out when it comes to making decisions, because it gives you a kind of peace knowing that God is there for you. You're not alone in making the decision.
Think of like what would happen like if you got caught. I'm like, would your parents like be mad? Would your relationship with God like reduce and stuff? Like you really got to put that in perspective.
It's really a skill that you learn growing up, and that's why I think we have better judgment as we get into adulthood, and we could actually make better judgments and be better people.
Yeah. I feel like your main ability to make good judgment is based on overcoming the huge decisions in life. Like, I mean, you could choose, oh, can I have carrots or chips today? But in the long run, what's really gonna decide who you are and, you know, what you're made of and your character is how you respond to those huge decisions. And in fact, you know, the Catechism states that man is sometimes confronted by situations that make moral judgments less assured and decisions difficult.
But he must always seriously seek what is right and good and discern the will of God expressed in divine law.
To this purpose, man strives to interpret the data of experience and the signs of the times, assisted by the virtue of prudence, by the advice of competent people, and by the help of the Holy Spirit and his gifts.
So have faith and listen to God in the quiet of your heart.
He will lead you down the path of good judgment.
Do you use good judgment?
We'd love to know. Contact us through our website.
The address is www.realfaithtv.com.
Or you can call us at 609-406-7402.
And we'll leave you today with this final thought from Pope John Paul II's letter, The Splendor of the Truth.
Certainly, in order to have good conscience, one must seek the truth.
And must make judgments in accordance with that same truth.
So always be seekers of the truth to help you use good judgment.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on
Realfaith TV.
God bless.